Hi, everyone. Good morning and welcome. This is Seek Sustainable Japan, our monthly sub series called Short Takes. I'm JJWalsh here in Hiroshima, joined by,
Hi, I'm Tove Kinooka here in Yokohama.
and as usual, this is a live show. So if you want to join in with any comments or questions, we'd be very happy for you to join us and try to answer along the way. Now, Tova, you've been in the UK. Now you're back in Japan. Are you? Oh, sorry, sorry,
Are
sorry,
you all right?
sorry. Sorry, sorry. Are we back? Are we okay?
Yep.
Sorry, I was getting an echo. Now it's okay, right?
Yep, didn't hear it this
Oh,
side.
okay, okay. Okay,
Maybe all
great.
good.
Sorry. Sorry about that. So, Tova, you're coming back to Japan. You handling the heat, okay?
Not enjoying it, to be perfectly honest. It was really nice to get away. I was in UK and Denmark visiting family. And in both those countries, we had days where it was sort of 29, 30, and everyone was sort of talking about how hot it was and whatever, but it wasn't humid. And so it was so comfortable. It was really nice. So it's a bit of a shock to the system to be back here with the really intense heat and humidity still going on. So
Yeah.
yeah, roll on autumn.
Yeah, right. But the news reports have said we're going to have another month of this type of heat. So we're
Yeah.
having longer and longer summers, like most of the world, and then shorter autumn, which is
Mm,
like the nicest time of the year.
yeah.
Shorter spring,
Yeah.
shorter winter, probably too. Right. That's
Yes.
climate change, right?
Very much so.
And then we'll talk a little bit about you going up to the Noto Peninsula, which is recovering from the earthquake, a little bit better, a little bit later. But you had some beautiful plant-based vegan food when you were in
Yeah.
London. Tell us about this.
So this was a normal kind of Italian-y style restaurant I went into in London, and that was the nice thing. You could go to a normal restaurant, and there would be at least two or three really nice vegetarian or vegan options on the menu. So it felt really inclusive in that way. So I was with my son, who, the back of the photo there, you might have seen the pizza. He was happily munching his pizza, and I had this beautiful sort of miso roast aubergine or something. It was gorgeous. There was just really nice food available, and beautiful salad here with sort of roast veg and cheese, goat's cheese and stuff. It was, yeah, interesting food. It wasn't just boring sort of, oh my gosh, scrape the meat off and give them some beans or something. It felt like, people have been really creative and thoughtful, and it was really easy to get anywhere. So that was great.
Yeah. That's awesome, and it's something that we hope we will get to in Japan, where you
Mm,
can walk into any restaurant and have an option, where at the moment, you really have to research, you really have to plan ahead. I was in Tokyo area, Kamakura recently, went to the amazing Luna Burger,
ooh,
right along the Enoden, so it's right next to Hasei Station, and he has 8 varieties of vegan burgers with different sauces and malasadas, which is a deep fried Portuguese donut, which you have to
ooh,
try. And if you eat it there, you can get vegan cream, which is put in hot malasada. So it's really next level, but this is still few and far between
mm,
in Japan, right?
yeah, yeah,
So every time I go somewhere like Tokyo, I know there's options, but I have to really plan ahead.
yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
being able to go to any destination and just walk in somewhere, know
Mm.
that everybody's gonna have a choice, that's major, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, that was really helpful. And even some of the other choices, quite a lot of them would have, say, an option just sort of underneath on the menu saying make it vegan or make it vegetarian, and you can, take off this bit or substitute that for, the meat item or whatever. So that again just gave you options, which it would be great to see more of here.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's something we often suggest when we do seminars,
Mm,
like plant-based seminars. For every restaurant, you should have something that at least you can say, we can make this vegan or we can
mm,
make this vegetarian.
yeah.
And you start with a vegetarian dashi. That seems to be a big hurdle.
Mm,
Can you change the soup stock of at least one of the main dishes? Make sure there's plant-based protein in there so it's not just a salad.
yeah.
People are gonna feel like they're still hungry after you want them
Mhm.
to feel satisfied, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. There are options there.
Awesome.
Hmm.
One of the big events, of course, for me this month, I had the chance to go to both Hiroshima and Nagasaki for the 80th commemorations. And here, just by chance, I happened to run into Ari Beezer, who's a peace-focused journalist and writer. And his grandfather was on the Enola Gay that dropped the bomb on
Oh, wow.
Hiroshima.
Hmm.
And his grandfather was the only pilot to also be on the Nagasaki plane to
Hmm.
drop the bomb on Nagasaki. And he recently is working with a Japanese woman who is the granddaughter
Ah.
of a man who survived
Mhm.
both Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So they wrote this book about being above and under the mushroom cloud. It's only in Japanese now, but it was really interesting to talk with him and learn more about this project and talk to so many people and realize this is such an important pivotal year, the 80th. It's a really
Yeah.
big deal, but it's really from now that we have to work hard to
Mm.
try to keep it top of mind because it seems so far away now
Yeah.
that
That's
people
so
are
relevant still
right.
with
Yeah.
the conflicts happening with nuclear armed states at the moment. This is not, an impossibility that, it might happen again. So I think making sure we keep those lessons in the sort of public awareness is so important.
Yeah, for sure. And we have less than 100,000 Hibakusha A-bomb survivors now. So hearing firsthand the testimony is such an important part of it.
Mm.
But we now have people who are training in telling their stories in the next generation, which is really important. But a survey in the Japan Times recently talked about how only 1 in 4 people in Japan that they surveyed actually knew when Japan had surrendered in World War II,
Yes, I
knew the
saw that.
date of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So
Mm.
even in Japan, these negotiations talking about Japan as a country focused on peace, not having its own military, everything is kind of in flux right now, right? So
Mm.
it's a really important year to
Yeah.
be considering a lot of these important discussions, right?
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, another important discussion, of course, is recovery. And you went up to the Noto Peninsula. Can you tell us about your trip?
Yep. So I went up with a group from the BCCJ, the British Chamber of Commerce. And since the big earthquake in January last year, right at the beginning of the year, when we were all doing our New Year celebrations, Noto Peninsula had a huge earthquake. You can see that's a pavement there. That's a former sake brewery. There's still a lot of stuff around that hasn't been repaired. A lot of the infrastructure, a lot of the local businesses are still without their premises. A lot of people are still living in temporary accommodation. We saw a lot of those ranging from sort of small sort of cabins like you can see here, tiny spaces, and super hot, I would imagine, and cold in the winter, through to sort of tent style ones as well, sort of even more temporary. And there are still a shocking number of those around. And even a lot of the old houses were damaged. But you can see here, this is a new build house with significant damage there on the end. And you saw a lot of these blue sheets around still on sort of buildings that looked otherwise okay, new buildings, old buildings, and then you'd see sort of blue sheets along roof lines and stuff where obviously there'd been structural damage and they still haven't had it repaired, and they're just sort of putting plasters, basically band-aids over it to make things livable and workable. And this is the shot from Google Maps when we were sort of driving around there. You could see a lot of the roads still are not usable. A lot of bridges were damaged. There was huge subsidence, particularly along the coastal and the mountain roads, where the roads literally just dropped away, fell apart. Which makes it very difficult, again, for the local businesses and local people living there. You've got elementary schools temporarily closed still, so it's disrupting education still as well.
I remember when they were talking about recovery,
Yeah.
getting in emergency supplies, getting in the self-defense force
Yes.
to try to help
Mm,
after the disaster. This was also like a really big
yeah,
issue. There were no roads they could access. So
exactly.
even now,
Yeah.
over a year later, it's still a big issue,
It's
right?
still causing problems. As you can see, there are still, I mean, this was just one part that I took a snapshot of, but there were a lot of areas in the map where, we couldn't go the normal road, or the Navi was still sort of, the navigation system was telling us, okay, sort of take the ramp and go up to this part. And there was no other option actually, because those other parts were still completely impassable and blocked off. And so, if that's your everyday and you're relying on those roads to move things around, to move people around, to get to schools and work and hospitals and things like this, it's still really tough. And we spoke to one of the local business, well, several local business owners there, because the BCCJ, since the earthquake last year, has been collaborating with the local chamber of commerce there in Wajima to understand, what can we do to help? How can we support small local businesses? So at the beginning, it was emergency supplies. We took huge amounts of stuff that was donated by BCCJ companies. And now it's more sort of ongoing. Okay, how can we help you with the rebuilding and sort of getting your businesses back up and running? And one of the guys we were talking to, Kirimoto-san, who runs, he's a very well-known lacquerware artist, maker, and generations of business. And he's done stuff for a lot of very high-end hotels, restaurants in Tokyo and Osaka and things like this. He lost his house and his factory and his sort of shop and studio area. He's now managed to rebuild, this is his temporary sort of workspace where he can, well, sort of display space. You can see a very sort of small hut there, and he's explaining, he's the guy in the middle at the back, explaining sort of the process to us and how it's made. Um, but he's, at the moment, he's living in what will become his new sort of shop piece, but they lost their house, so they're having to live in that at the moment while the other bit's being built. So this is still ongoing. But he was so passionate about the fact that they're proud, they're resilient, they're going to get back on their feet. And he said, we don't need to rely on any, we don't want to rely on outside help, but we don't want to be forgotten. We want you guys to help us get the word out that we're still here, we're still in business, and come and support us in that way.
Yeah.
So it
I
was really.
remember when I talked to Alex Kerr, the
Mm,
author, who wrote his latest book is about exploring the hidden gems around the Noto
mm,
Peninsula before the disaster. And
mhm.
he really highlights that Wajima area
Yeah.
and the best lacquer in
Mm,
Japan.
yeah.
So they've got one of the best industries, one of the best heritage and traditions,
Yeah.
and it's so devastating that that
Yeah.
whole area was completely destroyed, right?
Exactly.
So they're
Exactly.
fighting back. That's
Yeah.
wonderful, but
They
it's
are. Yeah.
might be an uphill battle for a while, right?
Yes, yeah, and we were there for the festival weekend, so a lot of people had come in. The town was absolutely buzzing. It's an incredible festival, and it was really nice to see a lot of young people there. All the mikoshis were being carried by, well, sort of largely young people, which was great to see. But when we spoke to some of the locals, and you can see them there getting into the taiko, so it was an incredible atmosphere. But a lot of them apparently had just come back for the weekend for the festival, and actually they live and work now in Tokyo or Osaka outside Wajima. So they're struggling as well with that. If the businesses can't rebuild and there are not schools and functional infrastructure around, it's hard to convince families that really they can stay and make a good life there. So a lot.
Yeah, I talked with Bernd Shellhorn, who they were based in Kyoto, and
Mm-hmm.
he's a shoujin yori chef from Germany originally, and has a Japanese partner, and they moved to Noto. And so I did an interview with them on the series, and they were one of the families decided to stay,
Mm,
right? And start to rebuild the community, not only doing disaster work, but just try to rebuild their lives.
Yeah.
And talking about the difficulties there. So
Mm,
I'll link that below. What a great conversation
yeah.
and
Yeah.
so inspiring. But even then, and this is months after, they were saying they were having not only like power outages, water was still an issue. Did you meet or see people there even now having those same issues or?
We didn't talk specifically about power or water issues. It was more sort of looking at the physical structures and things, and talking about talking to the businesses and their issues. But I wouldn't be surprised to hear that. Looking at the fact that a lot of the telegraph poles, that carrying the electric lines, were sort of at odd angles and things like this. You could imagine the disruption, and seeing how much the Earth had moved, with that pavement that used to be on the same level as the road and was now sort of almost a meter up from there. You can imagine the disruption that causes to water pipes, etc., underneath, sewage infrastructure, energy power lines and things like this. So yeah, it's a huge task to repair all of that. It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, they were talking about the entire coastline had
Mm,
been raised because
yes.
of the
Yeah.
earthquake. So you've got a whole new geography to
Yeah.
deal with, as well as so much disruption in the foundation of houses and things, right?
Yeah, yeah. Apparently some ports, one of the ports sort of that we looked out at, from where we were staying, one of the beach areas used to be a port, but because the ground raised so high, the port is now no longer accessible with
Oh,
the boats.
wow.
So they've had to move it completely. Huge disruption for the businesses based there.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, I'm so glad you got to be there and to see what's happening on the
Mm,
ground and such good projects, such good work with BCCJ, the
mm.
British Chamber of Commerce Japan. So that's wonderful. Is that an ongoing effort by BCCJ?
Very much so, very much so. So, and I think one of the reasons we went and did this trip was to see what there is, how much more still there is to do. So this is not finished by any means yet. They still need a lot more support. And just sort of to keep the awareness up, I think, with people that that this is still ongoing, and so the BCCJ will continue that relationship with the Chamber of Commerce. It's built a really wonderful relationship there with the local businesses and community. So it's great to see that sort of still very strong and flourishing going forward.
That's fantastic. And it's connected to another topic that I wanted to talk about with the changing rules for bringing international people into rural areas. I was talking with on the series Danny and Evan, who started Benton Homestead in Omishima, and they came over on a startup visa. They proved a good business model within a year and then got a business manager's visa, but this year, there's a big change now. You're
Mm.
changing the requirement from 5 million yen, which is about 34,000 US dollars, to 25 million yen
Wow, that's
requirement all
huge.
of a sudden.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these entrepreneurs who want to come into rural areas,
Mm,
which we need people to come in and help rebuild the local economy,
mm,
rebuild the community, be there actively running businesses, right?
mm.
So taking over abandoned houses, but also taking over abandoned farmland,
Yeah.
taking over other structures, having new ideas if
Mhm.
they're actually doing this is good businesses
Yeah.
that are helping the community, and they come in on a low hurdle of 5 million
Mm.
yen, that can open the doors to a lot of people who would see opportunities in Japan. But when you
Yeah.
raise it all of a sudden to 25 million, that's 169,000 US dollars. Like that's who
Yeah.
has that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. That's crazy. That's
yeah.
a very sudden and significant increase that doesn't seem to make sense.
No. So, Benton Homestead, they've been featured by CNN, so much international media. I recently just bought something from their online shop. I bought their honey because they're raising bees, Japanese bees, for
Mhm.
local honey, which of course helps all the local
Yeah.
farmers as well. They're doing organic farming, taking over abandoned farmland. and took over old abandoned house and made it into a wonderful guest house.
Mhm.
And they're ranked as one of the top places to stay on Airbnb.
Wow.
And they introduce all these things on their YouTube channel and get people to come in to an area they wouldn't normally go to.
Mm.
And so that helps the community. It helps other people, other businesses, the people in their community, of course, working side by side is
Mhm.
really positive as well.
Yeah.
So to
Yeah.
hear from businesses doing it, doing the hard work, showing that they can do it positively for the economy, this is a good part of Japan's economy. We don't want to lose people like this.
No. No,
So I will put in the link below. There is a public response period until the
okay.
end of next month. So if people can write in Japanese about why this new requirement shouldn't be
Mm.
raised so quickly, maybe we can assess the existing 40,000 businesses instead of just putting up the price for a
Yeah.
random reason. Like
Mm.
let's look at what's good, what needs to be improved, and assess it
Mm.
based on what's actually happening
Yeah.
instead of right.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That seems much more logical and rational approach rather than just
Yeah.
picking a number and yeah, sticking
But
that.
you can imagine, right? Like people in Tokyo, where income is higher, all the costs are higher, bringing it up to 25 million yen doesn't seem like a big deal.
Mm.
But when you live in the rural area, you can actually, I hear from so many people who've moved there because of the low cost of living.
Yeah.
25 million is a huge amount of money.
Huge amount. It
Yeah.
really is. Yeah. Yeah.
So we're hoping for some sanity and logic
Yeah,
bringing
wouldn't that
back,
be
right?
nice? Yeah.
Now, another story that was in the Japan Times is another entrepreneur story, GTN,
Mhm.
Global Trust Network. And this was started by a guy who was s- uh, in university, and so many of his fellow students who were international had so much trouble getting a place to rent.
Yeah.
And so he personally sponsored 20 students, and everybody was saying, don't do it, such a
Mm.
risk, you know? And then he didn't have any trouble. And so he started a business which provides the guarantor
Huh.
for foreign workers, foreign
Mhm.
students who are having trouble finding a place to rent. And so it's been a great business model, but in many ways, I was thinking about that there is an opportunity here, right?
Mm.
There's opportunities for businesses that see the foreigners not as a risk, but as an opportunity
Mhm.
to improve the business, to
Yeah.
improve the community.
Mhm.
And how can we make it work, right? So there's such a positive example
Yeah, that's
of not just the knee jerk reaction of no, no,
yeah.
foreigners can't do this or can't do that, but
Mm.
no, actually, like, is it a risk? And let's try
Mm.
it out and let's see what we
Yeah.
can do, you know?
Yeah, no, I love it. That's a brilliant idea there. I know a lot of people who have struggled to find places to rent and have been turned down as soon as the landlord or the company realizes that they're not Japanese. So it's really wonderful to see, there are options out there.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
even in our area, I remember when we were looking for a rental and you walk into a realtor and they've got all these listings and you're like, "Oh, is this a little bit?" And they're like, "No, no." And
Yeah.
then you realize, "Oh, you mean not for me." You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a big shock, right? Like, "Wait a
Really is.
second. Don't
Yeah.
they want to rent to someone?" You know?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
speaking of entrepreneurs, you were talking about a new system in Tokyo, circular station. Tell us about this.
So I don't know a huge amount of detail about it, but I was in Daikanyama in Tokyo on Monday, and walking back to the station, I stumbled across this. So it's a whole sort of little area just outside the station itself that's been redeveloped. And apparently, the main sort of building design is by Kengo Kuma very, very famous Japanese architect. But it looks like they've got, all these circular stations you can recycle different items, which is not always easy to find when you're just wandering around the town. They've got little shops all sort of related to or sort of following sustainability principles. There's a little cafe there. There's a plant shop. They've got these pop-up things going on. You can see there's one coming up sort of in September there, sort of upcycling, sort of giving people the opportunity to experience something, do something different. It's really great to see this happening here. They've got worm compost right outside the cafe there, which I thought was wonderful to see. Most people would probably not know anything about it, have never sort of experienced it. To see this out there in the town, not hidden at the back somewhere. So this is, it's perfectly natural. It's a great way of dealing with your waste. And you can see there that sort of a map sort of over an overview of what's in that little space there. So if you're in Tokyo, go and have a look. Go and enjoy the cafe. Unfortunately, I had to get back for a meeting, but I would definitely be going back there. It looks really good.
And that's a great thing, right? To just have it there.
Yeah.
And so when you often talk about these ideas of let's have reusable containers, and like James Hollow in his area, they have a network where they all use the same containers at cafes, and they have bins that they can put it in after, and then it's washed and reused. I mean, just having it there, having worm composting, where you can see the worms at work, like taking away the unknown, seeing it in action and trying it. I mean, that's something we should try in every neighborhood all through Japan, right?
Yeah, it would be wonderful to see that as well. And I think it sort of helps sort of build more of a community as well, right? If people are sort of coming together to do this and creating that infrastructure together that everybody can use, it's a really positive thing in so many ways. So it was really great to stumble across that.
That's fantastic. Yeah, more of that, please.
Yes, please.
You also had another article talking about a new kind of energy plant in Fukuoka, osmotic power. What is that? Can you explain?
Right. I'd never heard of it before. So it got my science nerd brain properly intrigued. So apparently it's a new, really interesting type of energy generation technology where they're mixing fresh and salt water together. And nature has this process called osmosis, which many people probably remember from, high school science classes, where things move from an area of high concentration to an area of lower concentration. And so because of the higher level of salt in the salt water, fresh water moves across to dilute that. And that movement creates energy. And so they can capture that energy and use it. At the moment they're using it to sort of power sort of energy plants that they've got going on there. So it's only the second one in the world, I think, at the moment. But the first one was in Denmark. This one's slightly bigger scale, and they've refined the technology. So it's still very new, but it's incredibly interesting, I think, because it's got such potential because it can run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all through the year. It's not disrupted by wind cycles or the amount of sunshine and things like solar and wind and some of the issues they struggle with. And there's salt water, so particularly somewhere like Japan, right? We're surrounded by salt water. We've got a lot of fresh water as well. Isn't that an incredible resource that we could use? So I'm really interested to watch and see how this goes. I mean, it's a sort of pilot project at the moment, creating drinkable water for Fukuoka, but it would be great to see that really get more investment, get it scaled up, and let's see more of that around. So simple, but just brilliant.
Yeah, and use, desalination.
Yeah.
So making drinking water from seawater,
Yeah.
that's huge as well, right? Like we want more filtration of rainwater, but being next to the coastline, like most places are in Japan, and using that, creating energy, but also creating such a vital resource for a local area. That's fantastic. Win-win, right?
So I'm really, really excited about the potential of this. Obviously, we need to be careful. We need to look at sort of intended consequences. Where's that fresh water coming from? How is it disrupting the, the biodiversity and the ecosystem there? We've got to be really, really conscious of that kind of thing. But I think it has huge potential.
Yeah, fantastic. There's just one more thing I wanted to mention. Tomorrow, I'm talking with an actor and playwright, Michael Mears, and he is coming to Japan with his play called The Mistake.
Hmm.
And it's connected to nuclear weapons and Hiroshima. And he created it thinking of the 80th
Mm.
anniversary, and really wanted to bring it to Japan. He's got a crowdfunding to get him over the line. I think he's got like just a tiny, tiny bit before he reaches his goal. So I'll put the link to that below. But it sounds fascinating. He'll be in Tokyo,
Hmm.
Totori, and Hiroshima. And interesting, he was in the explanation talking about how difficult it was to figure out where to have the performance,
Mm.
how to enter kind of the theater circuit in Japan.
Right.
And so it'll be interesting to talk to him and maybe connect with him with other people in that space,
Mm.
and have more of a people who are in theater or the arts in Japan having more of a bridge, like, to international
Mm.
artists who want to come in and want to have performances here. It's a bilingual performance, right?
Mm.
So should be
Mm.
wonderful talking with them. So please join us tomorrow for that.
Fantastic. Cool.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tova. Thanks everyone for joining. See you again next month. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.